Play only with the ball. When we lose the ball, no reaction. If somebody provocates you, no reaction. If the referee makes a mistake, no reaction. Mario, please. Minute 46.
No way.
Red card.
No way.
Iconic. What does that word mean to you? When it comes to football players, it usually goes towards players who played in a certain way and delivered some distinguishable moments in their career. And Mario Balotelli fits that description perfectly, as his career was filled with moments that were both bad and amazing. But both those bad and amazing moments contributed to him becoming a player that people talk about to this day. While many people remember a player who failed to reach his potential due to his inability to control his emotions on the pitch, give no effort in training, and not to mention all his controversies when he wasn't playing, but that still wouldn't fully describe Balotelli. To describe Balotelli, first you have to understand his circumstances from his beginning, where he'll be born not as Mario Balotelli, but instead Mario Barua in Palermo. Life wouldn't start off easy for young Mario because he would deal with intestinal issues that would become too expensive for his parents to fix. As they couldn't support him, they would give him up for adoption, where a wealthy family from Brescia would adopt Mario. Mario would be able to get the care he needed with his new family, and he would officially become Mario Balotelli as he changed his surname to match his foster family. His health would eventually get better, and as his health improved, he would grow into an unusually strong young boy with the skills of players half his size and double his age. He would be forced to play with players 2 to 3 years older than him due to parents of other teams' players complaining that this young boy was destroying their kids both physically and technically. As his talents became more and more apparent, Balotelli's confidence grew. By the age of 11, he would tell anyone and everyone that would listen that he would become the first black man to ever play for Italy. And that would become very much believable early on, because by the time he would turn 15, he would make his professional debut for the Serie C side Lumuzan, where he would catch the eyes of scouts all over Europe. Just few months after he made his debut, he would be invited to a trial for Barcelona, where he would prove his ability and impress the scouts with his 8 goals in 3 matches for the Barca's B team. This would convince Barca to sign the youngster, but negotiations would block his move as his agent would demand more money than the team was wanting to pay. This would open a golden opportunity for Inter Milan, as they would take advantage of the situation by signing Balotelli on a loan with an option to buy. In Inter, Balotelli would quickly prove Inter made the right decision signing him, with him impressing the youth coaches with his first touch and dribbling that was unseen from a striker of his size and strength. But what made him truly dangerous was his ability to strike the ball very strong, which made him almost unstoppable from outside the box, penalties, and free kicks. His ability to take penalties was one of the best in the world, because not only did he strike the ball hard, which made it tough for keepers to save, but his technique made his penalties truly great. He would take 3 straight steps to not give anything away to the keeper, then pause to read which direction the keeper was going, then put it in the opposite corner. And this would work nearly every time, making his penalties look very easy. And Balotelli knew just how good he was. So much so that he would even challenge Samuel Eto'o for the right to take the penalties before having to be escorted. His strength also made him a very capable player from early on, as he wouldn't get pushed around by senior players like many young exciting players do when they have yet to fully grow and lack the strength older players possess. So he would make his debut just a year after signing at the age of 17 against Cagliari, where just 3 days after he would get his first goals in Inter's shirt, as he get one from rounding the keeper and another from a tap-in in a Coppa Italia match. But more impressively, he made it impossible for defenders to take the ball away from him, as he would use his strength and dribbling to drive the ball forward. After this performance, chatter around Balotelli as the next great Italian striker grew, and Inter would advance to the next round of Coppa Italia, where they would get paired with Juventus. In the first leg, Balotelli would be left on the bench as 2 teams go at each other, with the game ending 2-2 with the next leg being played in Turin. To many people's surprise, Mancini would start the young Balotelli for this very important match. Many people questioned why a 17-year-old Balotelli was starting in place of Ibrahimovic, who this season was one of the players that constantly bailed out Inter with his magic. But where fans saw doubt, Mancini saw confidence, because he wanted to rest Ibrahimovic for league matches, as Inter were chasing their 3rd straight Serie A title in a row. And starting Balotelli over a known player like Crespo would provide an element of a surprise. And Mancini would look like a genius very quickly into the match, because in just the 10th minute, Balotelli would show his strength and composure as he bodied the marker off of him and controlled the ball with his shoulder to set up the first goal of the match. Inter would take the lead with this goal, but that lead wouldn't last long because Del Piero would score a free kick soon after to even the score. Juventus and Inter would both score 1 more goal each before halftime, as the game stayed even after the first half. And after the first half, it would be Balotelli who would put Inter up in the series, as he would receive the ball in the box by flicking it up, then using his knees to control the ball to then firing an absolute rocket. Oh, and he did all this while a defender was right on his back. By the end of the game, not only had Balotelli justified Mancini's trust in him, but he also announced himself as a promising young striker. And now that Balotelli had proven himself against a top team, he would now be relied upon more and more as the season went on, as he would be one of the first names called from the bench if Inter were trailing and needed a goal. Balotelli continued to put in performances that gave Inter confidence he could be Ibrahimovic's striker partner for the foreseeable future, with him showing not only his ability to score goals, but an all-around game that was rare from a striker his age. His first touch and dribbling made him a dangerous threat to anyone that marked him, and his hold-up play proved that he can lead the line if Inter needed him to. By the end of the season, Balotelli would put up great numbers as he would end with 7 goals in 15 games as Inter would win their 3rd straight Serie A title in a row. But things weren't all great for Balotelli because Mancini would get sacked at the end of the season, even with the 3rd title in a row, because of Mancini's poor performance in Europe. So now, Balotelli would have to gain the trust of a new manager, and that manager would be Jose Mourinho, the no-nonsense manager that demanded 100% effort from all his players. The effort part will be a problem for Balotelli because Balotelli was a notoriously bad trainer who didn't put in effort in training or even in games when he would be asked to press or run to make off-ball movements. While he was able to get away with that with Mancini, who ignored this because of Balotelli's obvious talents, Mourinho was a different animal as he didn't care who you were. If you didn't do your part as a team player, then you may as well not be on the team. So to start the season, Balotelli would rarely get playing time, but when he did, he made sure to impress, like in the Supercoppa Italiana match against Roma, where he would be brought on the 67th minute with Inter needing a goal to go ahead in the match. The moment he was brought on, the tides of the game changed as he would draw fouls and threaten Roma with his free kicks and outside the box shots. He would eventually get his goal in the 83rd minute as he would win the ball off of a defender and dinked it right past the keeper to give Inter the lead 2-1. Roma would score in the 90th minute though to force the game into penalties, where Balotelli would convert the second penalty for Inter as they would beat Roma 6-5. But this match would not be enough to convince Mourinho to give Balotelli a bigger role in the team, as he would be effectively frozen out the team from September to November as he would be relegated to an unused substitute. Eventually, Balotelli would get a shot in Inter's group stage match in the Champions League against the Anorthosis. In this match, the underdogs gave Inter a run for their money as they would score 3 goals, but Balotelli would respond to each time the Cyprus team would score as he would get a goal and 2 assists to rescue a point. Those goals made him the youngest player ever to score for Inter in the Champions League, and that point proved to be crucial as Inter barely escaped the group stages 1 point above 3rd place Werder Bremen. For that performance, Balotelli would get rewarded as he would see his usage go up after this game, but not for long, because in January he would be dropped again, this time being left out of the first team squad entirely. Why did he get dropped? Well, Balotelli's work ethic in training didn't improve as the season went on, and Mourinho got fed up with the youngster who should be training hard to improve but instead put in no effort compared to established veterans. And it wasn't only Mourinho who had problem with his attitude, because he would also turn up late to Italy's under-21 training camp, which would annoy the manager because he knew just how great Balotelli could be if he acted mature. Balotelli's drop from Inter's first team would last a month and a half until their match against Bologna, where Balotelli would be subbed on in the 80th minute as the game was anyone's game with the score being 1-1. The very first thing Balotelli would do as he was brought onto the pitch was draw a foul, which would earn Inter a free kick which Balotelli would take and somehow score, and this would end up being the winner. In just Balotelli's first minute back on the pitch, he managed to get himself back on good terms with Mourinho and Inter, which would earn himself a spot in the starting lineup. After that game, Balotelli would go on a mad run, scoring crucial goals that saved Inter multiple times. He scored an outside-the-box strike that rescued the draw against Palermo, another 2 goals against Roma that saved the point, or his goal apiece against Juventus and Chievo that saved Inter from defeat. His run would see him scoring 8 goals in 13 games as Inter would continue their dominance in Serie A as they clinched the 4th straight title in a row. But while everything was great about Balotelli's performances on the pitch since he earned the starting job, there was new problems that arose with his time on the pitch. Balotelli is a very interesting character in a league where respect means everything on the field. But Balotelli didn't care and chose to be himself and have fun. He would taunt opposition players and fans, have some very funny celebrations, and the fact that he didn't care also meant that he easily got riled up and put in some dangerous challenges. This meant that he was very often in position to get carded, and he would earn 10 yellow cards that season, which is crazy. If there was a stat for yellow per 90, he would have definitely broken some records. And his personality combined with his reputation as a lazy player unfortunately contributed to him also starting to receive racist abuse this season. In one incident, Juventus fans would chant "There are no black Italians" when they played Inter, And the abuse wouldn't only stop on the pitch, as he would also get bananas thrown at him on the street just before the start of under 21 Euros. This racist abuse would only further egg on Balotelli to act out even more on the pitch. And speaking of under 21 Euros, Italy's match against Sweden was a perfect representation of Balotelli at this time. Balotelli would get the opening goal of this match with a great cut inside and a curler, but just 15 minutes later his temper would get the better of him as he would be sent off for retaliating at the opposition player. This temperament would continue to cause issues in the relationship between Mourinho and Balotelli, as Mourinho couldn't trust a 19-year-old Balotelli to act accordingly on the pitch. So even though Balotelli finished the season as a starter, wowing everybody as one of the top wonder kids in the world, in the next season he would get put right back on the bench. And this would understandably make Balotelli disgruntled. And instead of using this as motivation to improve, his performances started to take a dip as his attitude continued to get worse. It got to a point where Balotelli would only play 45 minutes on the pitch as a substitute, but he still would get called out by Mourinho as having come close to a 0 rating. Balotelli's level of caring reached a very low level, to the point where he was skipping meetings with the manager for an F1 qualification race, because in his own words, meetings can happen any day, but F1 is only once a year in Italy. Mourinho would get fed up with this behavior and eventually would get in arguments that resulted in him kicking Balotelli off the team bus on their way to the airport. Things really reached a breaking point when Mourinho left Balotelli off the team for the second leg of the Champions League round of 16 match against Chelsea. Balotelli wouldn't take too kindly to this, and just a few days after the match, he would go on a TV interview where the presenter handed him a Milan shirt, his childhood team and Inter's rivals. And instead of refusing, he took the shirt up to his chest smiling. This was the moment when a lot of Inter fans started to really turn on Balotelli, and even though he would later come out with an apology for the situation, the damage had been done, and there was nothing he could do to remedy this incident. And this relationship with the fans would take a turn for the worse in Inter's biggest game of the season, Champions League semi-finals first leg against prime Barcelona. In a battle between two of the greatest tactical minds in Pep Guardiola and Jose Mourinho, Inter, while being the underdogs, played the best they had all season and led 3-1 by the 61st minute. The star man of the game, Diego Milito, would get injured after scoring 2 goals, which meant Balotelli would have to play the final 15 minutes of the game. Balotelli would play badly in this match, and he would start to lose his temper once fans start to boo and whistle every time he made a mistake. This game would end 3-1 for Inter, but instead of celebrating this great moment, Balotelli would start talking back to the fans, which would eventually end up in him throwing his shirt on the ground and heading to the tunnel early. In the tunnel, Balotelli would get confronted by his teammate Marco Materazzi, the same man who provoked Zidane to headbutt him in the World Cup final. But his night would get worse, because he would be met with more aggressors when he tried to get into his car, as a group of Inter fans approached him, insulting him, and attempted to even attack him, which forced security to step in. For the Marco Materazzi part, the reason why he acted the way he did was, according to him, not because of the shirt throwing, but instead because Balotelli told everyone before the match that he would play badly on purpose. Now, I don't know if I believe that, because that's crazy even for Balotelli, but you guys can decide for yourselves. But anyways, that will mark the end of Balotelli's time at Inter, with everyone, the teammates, fans, and manager, all having been fed up with Balotelli. Writing was on the wall of Balotelli's imminent exit that summer. Although Balotelli's reputation had taken a hit, as he was now known as a talented but unmanageable wonderkid, teams outside of Italy were still eager to give Balotelli experience a try. Teams in Premier League were especially interested in Balotelli, with his pace and strength being perfect for the more faster paced and physical playstyle the league had to offer. Most of the top teams like Manchester United were interested in bringing in the talented striker, but it would be the up and coming Manchester City that won the Balotelli bidding war. Man City at the time were in year 3 of Abu Dhabi ownership, and were quickly rising up the Premier League table with all the money they've spent, with them finishing 5th in year 2 after coming in 10th just a year before. That improvement came in large thanks to their new manager, Roberto Mancini, Balotelli's first manager at Inter. Mancini was still a big believer in Balotelli. He believed he could put Balotelli on the right track and help him fulfill his potential and become a world-class striker that many believed he could become since the start of his career. And I mean, who could blame Mancini for thinking that way? He was the one who gave Balotelli his initial chance and witnessed Balotelli breakthrough from an unknown youngster to one of the most sought-after wonderkid. But while Mancini was right in the fact that Balotelli could become a great player in this new environment, he was wrong about Balotelli being able to mature, because his time at Man City would turn out to be one of the most event-filled stint ever witnessed. And that stint would become very interesting early on, because just 2 weeks after signing with the team, he would crash his Audi R8 near the training ground. When cops arrived on the scene, they quickly found something unusual when they checked Balotelli, as they found £5,000 in his back pocket. When asked why he had that much cash on him, he simply replied with, because I'm rich. But other than that, Balotelli was able to stay out of trouble until the start of the season, where he scored his first goal in City shirt in their Europa League game. This game though would delay Balotelli's appearance in the Premier League, as he injured his knee, which kept him out of action for a month. While he was out with injury, he would get into another run-in with the police, this time in Italy, when he and his brother tried to drive into a woman's prison when the gates opened because it intrigued the striker. After recovering from injury, he would score his first 2 Premier League goals against West Brom, with his second goal showcasing the tremendous touch, strength, and finishing that made everyone believe he could become a top striker. But in classic Balotelli fashion, his incredible performance would get overshadowed when he got sent off after picking up his second yellow card later into the game after kicking Yusuf Mulumbu. And his temper would continue to cause him issues because just a month later, he would get into a fight with his own teammate Jerome Boateng in training after Boateng put in a strong challenge Balotelli didn't appreciate. This incident would be quite a shame because it yet again put a damp in Balotelli's great start to his City career on the pitch. And just a couple weeks after the fighting, Balotelli could forget about the event because he would go on to win the Golden Boy Award. But even this moment would go on to cause controversy. When asked about the runner-up to the award, Jack Wilshere, Balotelli completely egoed him by claiming he didn't know him and that he would remind him about the award the next time they met. But that wouldn't be the end of that, because he would go on to further say that he was better than all the recent award winners besides Messi, who was only slightly better than him. This would only be the start of the entertainment Balotelli would bring, because he would quickly become one of the most talked about players in the Premier League that season. Balotelli would continue his strong start to the season, even scoring a hat-trick a week after he won the Golden Boy Award. And the box office showed that Balotelli would only get wilder in City's Europa League first leg against Dynamo Kiev, where he would have to get subbed out after the first half because of an grass allergy of all things. City would end up losing the game 2-0, and heading into the second leg of the series, it would only get funnier because Balotelli would go viral after a camera caught him not being able to put on a training bib until an assistant would have to help him out. Once he did get into the game, Balotelli would lose his head just 36 minutes into the game when he kicked the chest of Goran Popov, which got him sent off immediately, as City would have to try to climb out of a 2-0 hole with 10 men. The deficit would be too big for City to overcome, as they would get knocked out of Europa League, losing 2-1 to Kiev. This would set off Mancini, who up until this point tried to protect Balotelli from the negative media surrounding the striker. If that wasn't enough, Balotelli would get on the news again just 10 days after the red card, when he would be caught throwing darts at City's youth players. And this would make him unpopular within the youth players, and the young Foden would chime in on Balotelli.
What is your opinion about Mario Balotelli?
He's a good player, but he's got a bad attitude off the pitch. Yeah.
Even with the controversy surrounding Balotelli, City would still find success this season as they would head to the FA Cup final after beating Manchester United 1-0. Instead of celebrating this incredible victory with the team, Balotelli had another idea. He would taunt United fans after the game ended, which provoked Ferdinand and got him screaming and chasing Balotelli around. City would play Stoke in the FA Cup final, and in this game, Balotelli would put in a man-of-the-match performance where he would assist the only goal of the game as City would win 1-0. But perhaps what's more memorable is Balotelli's post-game interview.
I play all my season was shit, can I say that? My season wasn't good.
While Balotelli showed in moments throughout the season why he was signed, this season also saw Balotelli get into more trouble off the pitch than he had in Inter. He would now be put under scrutiny by the much larger English media, and the hope would be Balotelli would be able to get his issues under control in his second season as he would settle into England. But that hope would quickly get broken in a preseason friendly against the LA Galaxy, where Balotelli would attempt a spinning backheel shot that infuriated Mancini, which caused him to get subbed out and get told off by the manager. After the game, Mancini would still take it easy on Balotelli, mentioning how Mario was still young and he just wants to help the striker. Balotelli though would only dig himself a bigger hole because in an interview a week after the game, Balotelli would straight up say he was not happy in Manchester. Not because of players or the manager, but just the city itself. He went on to further mention how he missed home with his friends and family, and he would end the interview by saying he would like to join Milan. And just few days after this interview, mentioning how he didn't have issues with his teammates, he would get into yet another fight in training, this time with Alexander Kolarov. While off the pitch, Balotelli would complain. To start the season, Balotelli would be on fire, scoring goals left and right, until he literally set his house on fire when he and his friends set off a firework inside his house. Now, Balotelli would try to claim it was his friends that set off the firework, not him. But after seeing a video of Balotelli throwing fireworks in the locker room years after this incident, I think Balotelli was probably guilty. This also came at a bad time for City and Balotelli because it was just days before their big game against United, who were in a tight title race with each other. Instead of focusing on the derby, everyone would make fun of Balotelli as he would become the butt of the joke with fans and media across the league, taking turns taking shots at Balotelli. Balotelli had everything to prove in this match after this incident, and he would make sure to use his full powers to play the game of his life. He would eventually shut everyone up when he scored the game's opening goal from the edge of the box, but more importantly, he would pull his jersey above his head, revealing a message that said, "Why always me?" Now, in classic Balotelli fashion, he would get a yellow card for this, but not because of the shirt or message, but because he pulled his jersey over his head. But that didn't matter to Balotelli, and this time he would be the one getting players sent off, not him, because he would force Johnny Evans to hold him when he was through on goal, which got Evans sent off immediately. Shortly after getting Evans sent off, he would get his second goal of the game to give City a comfortable lead, as City would go on to beat United 6-1. The second goal though paled in context to his first goal, or rather his celebration, because this celebration would break the Premier League as it became an iconic moment, a moment that could only come from a person like Balotelli. When asked about why he chose to wear the shirt, he would say this.
It was to all the people that just talk and bad about me and say stuff not nice about
press.
me, and they don't know me.
Right.
So just asking why always me? Like, why always me?
This moment would only validate Balotelli, and he would continue being himself. And Balotelli would do Balotelli things a month later when he was subbed on in the 65th minute against Liverpool. He would get a yellow shortly after getting subbed on as he yanked a player down, and it would only escalate when he bumped into another player, which earned him a second yellow card. Balotelli's training regimen would also eventually cause issues when he got confronted by his teammate Micah Richards for not running hard enough in training. This would cause Balotelli's third fight with a teammate where Milner and Toure alongside Mancini had to step in to break up the fight. And this attitude in training wasn't a one-off thing because his behavior in training was starting to become synonymous with the name Balotelli, as his work ethic never improved ever since his Inter days. In City, it got to a point where he picked up over £100,000 in fines for turning up to training not on time, and when he did get to training, he rarely was ever a standout performer. But City would continue to let Balotelli be Balotelli, and he would continue receiving playing time as he enjoyed his best season yet, running through Premier League defenders and scoring when he wanted to. And with his great performance came a price, like in City's match against Tottenham, where City would blow a 2-goal lead when Gareth Bale scored an outside-the-box strike to make the score 2-2. Immediately after that goal from Bale, Balotelli would be brought on to save the day. Just 15 minutes after getting subbed on, Balotelli would get carded for fouling Asu Ekoto, and a couple minutes later it seemed as if Balotelli would get his second sending off of this season when he stomped on Scott Parker's head. Luckily for Balotelli, the ref didn't see the incident and he would be allowed to play the rest of the game, where Balotelli would earn a penalty in stoppage time when Ledley King put in a dangerous challenge in the box. Balotelli would easily convert the penalty, sending the keeper the wrong way, rescuing City the much needed 3 points. While City were able to get away with the win, Balotelli wouldn't be as lucky because the incident with Scott Parker would get reviewed after the game, and the FA would ban Balotelli for 4 matches. When Balotelli finished serving his ban, he was able to stay out of his own way for 1 month before giving City more things to worry about in their title race. Balotelli would be at his peak craziness in City's game against Sunderland, in a very physical game where Balotelli would draw multiple fouls, even earning a free kick Kolarov would take. Dzeko would eventually get fouled inside the box, where Balotelli would convert to tie this very tense game. Things would reach a breaking point when Micah Richards and a Sunderland player clashed heads, which set off Dzeko before having to be separated and calmed down by Balotelli of all people. But then things would get worse for City as Bentner would score a header just before halftime, which just made City players lose their heads even more. And this tension would cause Yaya Toure and Balotelli to get into a fight inside their dressing room after Toure criticized Balotelli's behavior and work ethic in this game. If things weren't bad enough, Sunderland would make it worse after halftime as they scored their 3rd goal of the game, which would give City a mountain to climb if they wanted any points. As City were fighting back to get into this game, Kolarov would earn a free kick on the edge of the box. But even this would cause more fighting within City because Balotelli and Kolarov would get into arguing over who should take the free kick. Balotelli would have to get separated by Vincent Kompany, with Kolarov ending up being the one to take the free kick that ended in a goal kick. And with minutes winding down and no goal in sight, City fans started to leave with 5 minutes remaining in regular time. With fans leaving and City's chances dwindling, Balotelli would do the unthinkable as the striker would hit an absolute rocket that gave the keeper no chance to react, giving City a glimmer of hope in this game. And just after this goal, Balotelli's free kick partner Kolarov would score, which gave City the much needed point in this title challenge. Even with Balotelli's 2 goals being crucial in City surviving with a point in this match, Mancini would still have a problem with his game because of Balotelli being invisible for the majority of the game before scoring the 2 goals. If Mancini had problem with Balotelli in this game, he would have an even better reason in the very next game. In this game against Arsenal, Balotelli was an absolute menace on the pitch, putting in dangerous challenge left and right, which eventually would get him sent off at the end of the game with City losing 1-0. This loss would not only see Balotelli get banned for the next 3 games, but it also meant that City were now 8 points from top of the league with 6 games remaining in the season. And at this point, it seemed like Mancini was officially done with Balotelli, saying after the match, "I'm finished," and having Mario on the pitch is a very big risk because of his tendencies to get sent off. And he would finish his interview saying he would sell Balotelli. Now that City were 8 points from the top, it seemed almost certain they would be out of the title picture. But then something strange happened. United would lose to Wigan in their next game, with City winning theirs to cut the lead down to 5. Then both sides would win both of their games after, but in their third games, United would drop more points against Everton, which now cut the lead down to 3 points, with their very next game being against each other. Now Balotelli would be back from his suspension, but Mancini wouldn't trust Balotelli in their biggest game of the season, so Balotelli would have to sit on the bench as he would see City go on top of the table on goal difference as City beat United. United and City would both win their next games, which would set up an important final day where United's and City's game would be both played at the same time to determine the title winners. City would play QPR, who just like City had all to play for as they would fight to avoid relegation. The game would start off as expected, with City going up in the game in the 39th minute, but then a City mistake would tie the game and put City behind United. But then an incredible lucky break came through for City because one of QPR's players, Joey Barton, would turn into Balotelli and completely go crazy, elbowing Tevez, which got him sent off. Barton would then leave the pitch and kick Sergio Aguero just for good measure, and then get into it with another person on the sideline, and I think you guys know at this point who that person is. With QPR down to 10 men, City looked to capitalize on their advantage, and they would come very close to taking the lead when the ball got saved right on the line. But right after that, QPR would pull off the impossible to make the score 2-1. City would now have to score 2 goals in the last 25 minutes of the game to win the league, with United seemingly in control of their game. But that would be easier said than done, as they would struggle to get anything going, and Mancini, out of options, would have to turn to the one man earlier he vowed to sell, Balotelli. He would get subbed on in the 75th minute in hopes of making something happen, and that something wouldn't happen for a very long time until Dzeko scored a header to give City a chance at a miracle in the 92nd minute. With the clock winding down, City would get one last chance at the title, and Balotelli would receive the ball in the box, then pass the ball right back to Aguero, who then would go on to make the greatest moment in Premier League history with his strike. So to get this straight, Balotelli, who was basically frozen out of the squad by this point, with all signs pointing to him being sold, got subbed on as the last resort and ended up architecting the greatest moment in Premier League anyone has ever seen. To make things even better, that was his first Premier League assist of the season, and I don't care if that looked accidental, that was peak Balotelli. You truly don't ever know what you're going to get with this guy. And what might be forgotten throughout all of the drama Balotelli went through this season was the fact that he had his best season of his career, scoring 13 goals in 23 matches, with a good chunk of the 23 appearances coming from the bench. Balotelli would become a bit of a cult hero in City after this season, and would even get a chant made by the fans. This performance would get rewarded as Balotelli would get a call up to the national team to participate in Euro 2012, taking place in Poland and Ukraine. Now, this tournament would bring in a new challenge for Balotelli, racism, with him being back in the spotlight of Italian media who Balotelli had history of racism with back in Inter. And this would only get worse now with Balotelli's increased stature, and also all the recent events in City placed a big target on Balotelli. And he wasn't naive to this, so before the tournament he would vow to retaliate if any incident were to pop up. Balotelli would start in Italy's first group stage match against Spain, where he would realize his dream of becoming the first black man to play for the Italian national team. But in what was supposed to be a dream moment for Balotelli quickly turned into a nightmare, because Balotelli would put up a stinker in this match, missing many chances before getting subbed off in the 56th minute. His replacement would be Antonio Di Natale, who would get a goal of his own as a substitute, which would only make things worse for Balotelli, as it would give more reason for fans who dislike Balotelli to want to see him benched. Balotelli's struggle would only continue his next game against Croatia, and to make things even worse, Balotelli would have to endure racism from Croatian fans as they threw bananas and made monkey noises towards the striker. After this game, fans who didn't like Balotelli would get their way, as Balotelli would be benched for this game. Balotelli would eventually get onto the pitch in the 75th minute as a substitute, while Italy were attempting to close the game out with their 1-0 lead. Something crazy would happen though, because in the 90th minute Balotelli was scoring an incredible volley, and instead of celebrating, Balotelli looked to let off some steam and talked back to all of his doubters before Leonardo Bonucci prevented him from speaking. And while some may think this would quiet down the racist chatter after such an incredible goal, it would only enrage some Italian fans even more. An Italian politician would even post a picture of Balotelli bent down in the fields with the caption saying, "This clown should go and work in the fields." After getting pushback for this post, the politician would post another picture, this time a picture of him in a council meeting with a black resident, saying, "How can they accuse me of racism? I work with non-European Union nationals." That just goes to show you the level of people we are dealing with, but anyways, that goal would earn Balotelli a spot back into the starting lineup, with their next game being against England in the quarterfinals. In this game, Balotelli would do well to get into position to score, but many of his chances would get wasted, as both teams failed to score, which would force the game into penalties. Balotelli would be the first to take the penalty, and sure enough, he would score, and Italy would finish the job as they would end up winning the penalties 4-2 to earn a spot in the semi-finals. This was a great victory for Italy, but instead of focusing on that, Balotelli continued to be what anyone in Italy talked about, and more questionable pictures of Balotelli would get posted. A newspaper would even go as far as to post Balotelli depicted as King Kong. Throughout all this, somehow Balotelli was able to stay calm, at least relative to Balotelli, because throughout the tournament he was able to not get sent off, when before it seemed like he would get carded whenever he felt like it. He would even get asked in an interview why he never celebrated his goals, because if you didn't notice, Balotelli never celebrates his goals how a normal player does. Every time he either doesn't react or instead he tries to fight everyone. Balotelli would respond to this question with an all-time quote saying, "When I score, I don't celebrate, because I'm only doing my job. When the postman delivers letters, does he celebrate?" And funny enough, that quote would come into play in the semi-final against Germany. Balotelli would score the first goal of this game, scoring a header, and this time he would actually celebrate, screaming at the top of his lungs, jumping around. Just a few minutes later, Balotelli would do what no one thought was possible, as he received the ball with acres of space where he would eventually strike an absolute rocket, keeping Manuel Neuer rooted to the ground to score. This celebration though would be in true Balotelli fashion. He would take off his shirt and flex, while just staring angrily into the crowd, almost as if this was a middle finger to all the critics. These two goals from Balotelli would be enough for Italy to win the game, and as the game ended, Balotelli would switch from an angry man wanting to fight everyone to emotional, as he would go straight to his mother to celebrate. After this game, the final was set, Italy vs Spain in the final, but nobody seemed to care because once again Balotelli stole the show, because all anyone could talk about after this game was his second goal, but mostly what he did after. Everyone, not just who watched the sport, but even normal everyday people, would post memes of this pose. Some people didn't even know who Balotelli was or where the picture came from, but this photo became so iconic it didn't matter. What makes this even crazier is the fact that this moment is remembered by everyone to this day. And also the fact that Balotelli had 3 moments this season that is iconic to this day, more than a decade after this season. And he did all this while he was only 21 years old, which is insane to think. He basically speed ran through multiple careers worth of moments in just his age 21 season. Italy would go on to lose in the final against Spain, but for Balotelli it didn't matter too much because he had already become a star after the semi-final against Germany. And it seemed like Mancini's statement of selling Balotelli would be thrown out of the window now, as Balotelli would stay in City for his 3rd season for the team. This season though would get off to a bad start because Balotelli failed to capture his form from Euros and would end up only scoring 1 goal in 13 league games before a certain incident. The incident in question would take place in training, where Balotelli would have his final ever fight in City, but this time it would be the manager Mancini he would be fighting. According to Mancini, he told players that day to not make stupid tackles on Gael Clichy because he was coming off of an injury, but Balotelli chose to ignore this and would then make a strong tackle on Clichy. Mancini, furious, tried to grab Balotelli's collar, but since Balotelli was too strong, Mancini wouldn't be able to do anything, and that was the end of the argument. And that would be the end of Balotelli in City. With his production not being there and the player wanting to go back to Italy, it made more sense to sell him than keep the striker. But surprisingly, when Balotelli was sold, there wasn't a sigh of relief from the manager, but rather he would just be disappointed like a father to a son, saying he should have done a lot more in his time in Manchester. The team that would end up buying Balotelli was his childhood team AC Milan, who paid 20 million euros for the striker, after just earlier that month, Milan's owner Silvio Berlusconi saying he would never sign the striker and comparing him to a rotten apple. But that didn't matter now because Balotelli was now a Milan player, and his return to Italy would cause excitement across the entire fan base. His first day back in Milan would see many fans gather outside the restaurant he was eating at, with everyone celebrating by singing chants and setting off fireworks. The celebration would end up getting so wild that police would end up getting called, which would then escalate to fans and the police fighting, with tear gas and bottles being thrown, which would result in a policeman having to be taken to the hospital for injuries. While Balotelli would have many supporters after the transfer, there were still some people who weren't that excited by the striker, like the owner's brother Paolo Berlusconi, who described him as family's little word I can't say. So that would make Balotelli's debut in Milan one of the most anticipated games of the season, with many critics and fans watching closely to either see the striker fail or succeed. He would start off the match showing his strength and dribbling ability as he went right by a challenge to shoot outside the box, which would narrowly miss. Then, just a moment later, he would find himself in another position to score, but would miss after a keeper made a save on the shot. By his third time would be the charm, as he would strike the ball into the net to get his first goal as a Milan player. The game would be tied 1-1 as the injury time was winding down, but Stephen El Shaarawy would get fouled inside the box, which would set up a Balotelli pen. Up until this point in his career, he had never missed a penalty, and that record wouldn't be broken that day, as he would send the keeper the wrong way to win Milan the game. This game would be the start of a crazy run of form for Balotelli. He was scoring in what seemed like every game after, any way possible. Headers, free kicks, outside the box shots, you could name anything. But not everything was great for Balotelli, because he would deal with racism yet again. First in the match against his old team, Inter, where he would be met with racist chants and bananas being waved at the striker. It even got to a point where one of the matches would have to get paused by the referee because the racist chants got so bad. Balotelli would do well to ignore the abuse and carry on playing this season, which would result in him scoring 12 goals in 13 games, helping Milan secure Champions League spot. Going into his next season, the expectations would be very high for Milan and Balotelli, with the team counting on the young attacking trio of Niang, El Shaarawy, and Balotelli, nicknamed the Mohawk Trident, to improve and lead the team to success. Things wouldn't work out as hoped though, because Milan would fail to replicate success from last season, as they would tumble down the table to 8th, missing out on European competition next season. Balotelli was not the biggest one at fault for the slide this season. He still managed to provide moments of excellence, with him scoring a decent 14 goals in 30 games. But what people had issues with Balotelli this season was everything outside of goals, because his demeanor and work ethic on the pitch was quite bad this season, with the tendency to not press and do all the dirty work. And with Milan missing out on Europe and having financial constraints, the decision would be an easy one to sell Balotelli when Liverpool came knocking with a £16 million offer. Some people like Christian Vieri would even go as far as to say the transfer was the biggest coup in Milan's history. But I think there was a perfect quote on the matter saying, "Balotelli is a strange phenomenon. There's excitement when he joins and leaves." But when Balotelli joined Liverpool, there was a bit less excitement than when he joined Milan. The manager Brendan Rodgers even said earlier that summer that Balotelli will not be at Liverpool, when there were rumors he would join the team. And when Rodgers would tell the team captain Steven Gerrard about the signing, he would describe the signing as a last option gamble, to which Gerrard wasn't the most excited about. Instead of gaining the trust of the managers and teammates, Balotelli would do the very opposite. His laziness and work ethic didn't sit well with his manager and teammates, and to make everything worse, his goals had dried up this season, scoring 1 in 20. It would get pretty bad between Liverpool and Balotelli in Liverpool's game against Besiktas in the Europa League, where Balotelli would come in as a substitute. The game stayed scoreless until Liverpool earned a penalty late into the game, where Jordan Henderson should have taken it because he was the next man up after Gerrard, with Gerrard not playing in this game. But Balotelli had other ideas and decided to take the ball and be the one to take the penalty, which he would score, earning Liverpool the win. But only Balotelli can manage to piss everyone off after scoring the game-winning goal. Team captain Gerrard would call Balotelli mischievous for not following the rules, and Rodgers would criticize the striker for not trying after scoring. To make everything even better, Balotelli would also not follow the rules off the pitch in the motorway. He would get banned from driving for a month for driving 109 miles per hour in his Ferrari car. When asked why he was going so fast, Balotelli responded saying he didn't realize how fast he was going because he thought the car's speedometer was in kilometers, not miles. By this point, Liverpool were done with Balotelli. He failed to be a team player and got in all sorts of predicaments off the pitch. And now there wasn't even goals to justify all this. They would decide to loan him back to Milan in hopes of him regaining his lost form. But that form was nowhere to be found in Milan because Balotelli got injured at the start of the season, which kept him out for 3 months. Once coming back, he would drop a back-to-back 1 goal in 20 game season in Milan as they finished 7th. Balotelli would return to Liverpool at the end of the season, and at Liverpool there would be a new man in charge, Jurgen Klopp. Klopp though would want nothing to do with Balotelli, as his gegenpress tactic required pressing from the forwards, which Balotelli was definitely not going to do. So a search would start once he returned to find him a new team. Finding Balotelli a new team would be a big challenge though, with his stock at an all-time low. With his form and big wages, that meant that the only way Liverpool were going to get rid of Balotelli was to terminate his contract and pay off the rest of his contract. With the contract now terminated, Balotelli would join Nice on deadline day, where the striker would try to revive his career. In Nice, Balotelli would play under Lucien Favre, who would let Balotelli solely focus in on what he does best: score goals instead of having to press or create chances. This decision would fix the once broken Balotelli. He was back to playing at his best, scoring 2 goals in his debut, with his second being the game-winning penalty, and then scoring 2 more goals in his very next game. This season would see Balotelli at his very best, scoring wonder goals, showboating, and getting into fights and getting sent off. If that's not the best version of Balotelli, then I don't know what is. By the end of the season, Nice would have their best season in a long time, finishing 3rd in the league, in large thanks to Balotelli's 15 league goals. This resurgence would earn Balotelli a spot back in the national team after being left out of the team ever since his iconic Euros performance. And in the next season, he would only continue to get better, this time scoring his best amount since the Milan days, scoring 26 goals in all competitions. After this season, Lucien Favre would leave the team, and Balotelli's former teammate Patrick Vieira would join the team as the new manager. Vieira and Balotelli would not get along well, with Vieira being a strict manager who demanded effort from his players at all times, which was a recipe for disaster with Balotelli. As their relationship got worse, Balotelli's playing time would only shrink more and more, and with that, his confidence would be gone, which meant that his goal-scoring ability was also missing. Nice and Balotelli would eventually part ways in January, and this would begin Balotelli's journey of jumping from team to team in Europe, where he would play for 5 different teams in just 5 years. Today he plays for Adana Demirspor in the Turkish league, where he's actually playing pretty well and showing once in a while the glimpse of that Balotelli magic. Balotelli's time at the top of the sport is pretty much done at this point, and while many people may be disappointed at how his career turned out considering the ability he possessed at such a young age, he still provided moments that won't be forgotten. He was a strange character who did what he wanted to, and to his credit, he got very far that way, playing at the top level, scoring amazing goals, and entertaining the masses. Because he never compromised who he was, fans got to witness the iconic "Why Always Me," or his Euro goals and celebration, or his numerous red cards after doing something ridiculous. There will never be another striker or even a player like Balotelli, and even if he never reached the peak he could have, the entertainment he brought on and off the pitch while he was at the top is undeniable, and that's what makes him forever iconic.